we are back. This is Local Biz Now. I am Joe Vagnone, and I'm here with my co-host for the day, Chris Hoke. He is also the news director and also the assistant general manager of the radio station, so he could pull the plug on this show at any minute, gentlemen. So let's keep that in mind.
Hey, okay, Robert's at the board. He could get tired of all of us.
Okay, guys, let's get right to it. I want Robert. Can you play for me Pat McCrory's radio station, and I'm going to tell you when to stop it because I want to be able to break this thing up into pieces. So everybody listen to what Pat McCrory had to say about my buddies.
The people in North Mecklenburg were fooled, were lied to. And some of them knew it at the time, but for political reasons did not say it, including Republican Jim Puckett. I told Jim Puckett this as he campaigned for Democrat Roy Cooper. Jim Puckett should leave the Republican Party.
Why? Because he supported
Jim Trogdon.
Okay, play just a little bit more of that. I want to.
Trogdon used to work for Beverly Perdue, and he worked for me. He was the architect of the I-77 toll lane project.
Okay, stop it right there. Okay, Jim. Would you like to become a Democrat? Now is your opportunity to accept Pat McCrory's invitation and become a Democrat.
Well, let me tell you, many, many years ago, I stopped being a Republican as defined by Pat McCrory. Pat McCrory has been a Democrat in sheep's clothing or wolf's clothing or elephant clothing for many, many years. He did the bidding of the downtown business community, which had a very liberal agenda, and when he got to Raleigh, he ended up fighting the legislature an awful lot. You know, it's sad that Pat now is relegated to a radio show where he tries to rewrite history in a manner such that it covers up his mistakes. And you know, Pat is what Pat is. So if Pat is the Republican Party, then I do need to find a new home.
Okay, but Jim, one of the things he mentions in that clip, which is interesting, is that I'm sorry, I can't say his
Jim
last name.
Trogdon.
Trogdon, right?
General Trogdon, as a matter of fact.
So the General was a Democrat. And was always part of the I-77 plan from the beginning. And so when they put him in that position, all of you should have known that there's no way he was going to walk away from something that he had already started. So his point is you were misleading all of us in North Mecklenburg because you know this guy was never actually going to do that. And so we lost the opportunity to have a Republican governor over a point, in fact, that which we would have never going to win anyways. That's what Pat's saying, I think. Obviously, Pat doesn't need me to defend him, but talk a little bit about that.
Well, no, actually, Pat's just completely wrong. And a couple of things. One, I have no idea what party Jim Trogdon is a member of. I will tell you what I do know about Jim Trogdon. Jim Trogdon's a retired general in the United States Army. I actually had a kid brother who served under him, not directly, but in his chain of command. He's an honorable guy, and the one thing that Jim Trogdon does is follow orders. And when he worked for a Democratic governor, he did what the Democratic governor instructed him to do. When he worked for Pat McCrory, he did what Pat McCrory instructed him to do, and he now works for Roy Cooper, and he does what Roy Cooper tells him to do. So as the Secretary of Transportation, he does what his commander tells him to do. And so we can talk about that. But the fact of the matter is, Pat is the person who did not listen to constituents. I, on a number of occasions, eyeball to eyeball, told him, Pat, you are so wrong on I-77. You need to change your mind or you're going to lose your seat. And I think, and he even now admits that was in all likelihood why.
Hold that, because I want to get Bill in on the conversation and we'll dig into that. Okay, Robert, go ahead and play the rest of this clip.
The local newspaper here does not mention that, and they know it, and so does many of the North Meck leaders. The North Meck, Lake Norman, head of the Chamber of Commerce, should resign today.
Oh!
Because he has been lying to the people of North Meck now for 2 years about the I-77 toll project.
Lying in what way?
He was saying, first of all, that the project was illegal, and I'm not going to paraphrase what he said, but he said they would overturn it, and that Roy Cooper would overturn it. Roy Cooper did not tell the truth. And listen, I'm a part of this. I have a conflict of interest.
We agree on that.
I didn't sign the contract. My Secretary of Transportation.
Pull it off. Okay, good. So, okay, Bill, this is your opportunity. Would you like to go ahead and resign from the Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce?
Well, first off, I don't work for Pat McCrory or DOT or Centra. I work at the pleasure of the board of directors and for the businesses of Lake Norman.
Amen.
So
That's obvious based on the sign you brought. He brought an anti-toll sign this morning. Hey, we might have.
Yeah, keep an eye on that. If that's Bob Morgan
Let's see
on
if
the
Bob
phone.
Morgan's on the phone
If that's
here.
Bob Morgan on the
If
phone.
somebody's
I
selling
want
a
him.
pot or pan, they wouldn't be able to join us. We got Bob Morgan with us.
Hello?
Hello, yes.
Hey, is this Bob?
Hey, no, this is Larry Baumgardner.
Oh, Larry.
Hello, Larry.
We're going to have to wait for Larry on the next show. We're looking for Bob Morgan.
Thanks.
All right,
Yeah, we'll move on.
We're looking
Sorry about
for
that.
Bob on that. Yeah, watch the numbers, see if you can catch Bob. Go ahead, Bill. I'm sorry.
Well, what I wanted to say was Pat said he didn't want to misconstrue something that I said, but I've actually never said it was an illegal project. Matter of fact, it is a legal project.
Yeah.
We talked to then Attorney General Cooper then, who said it wasn't illegal. It was bad policy. What I've said is unconscionable. It's unethical. It's a bad policy. It's bad for business. It should be illegal, but I've never said that it was illegal.
Well, Bill, what he's saying, and it kind of goes the same thing that I was talking to Jim about, what he's saying is you have always known from day one that getting this thing changed would absolutely never happen. Now, it's funny that I'm asking you this, Bill, because you and I have had this conversation. I'm one of those guys that said to you years ago, Bill, a small business guy, our odds are always against us. We don't care what the outcome is. We care that we fight the fight. So it's kind of funny that I'm asking you this now, but the truth is that's what Pat's saying. Pat's saying you have known from day one that this thing was going to go forward, and for you to suggest to the people of North Mecklenburg anything else different was going to happen makes it disingenuous for you.
You know, I actually told you 3 years ago, and John Hetwer, I said, this is a train coming down the path. I didn't think we could stop it. But, you know, the fact of the matter is Jesse James stopped a lot of trains in their tracks. But here's the deal. All of us, whether you're elected officials or Chamber of Commerce execs, we have a number one goal, and our number one goal is to leave our community better than we found it. I've been working here for 22 years. That's my goal. If I were not to put everything I have into trying to stop this project, to have the state buy it out, I would not be leaving Lake Norman when I do retire better than I found it.
And you're going to retire when you want to, on your terms.
Probably when the board of directors wants me to.
Yes, Chris.
Want to get you guys to comment on one piece of this that's really been kind of a part of the discussion is the fact that a lot of folks said, hey, this is a good thing. We want to use this public-private partnership as a means to get this problem fixed. But then when the contract came out, whoa, we see some changes that need to be made. That's, for some that's like, hey, what's going on, guys? You're changing your minds. Weigh in on that a little bit, if you would, and kind of what that scenario looks like and what happened there.
Well, I'll let Bill say why he agreed with this in the beginning, and then why I changed his mind before it was over with.
It's very interesting because, like you said, Jim has been against it all along. Bill, you had a little different view.
Well, for years, and we've talked about this, for years we were told this is the only way it could be done. Either you widen through managed lanes, or then it became the P3 partnerships, or it doesn't happen for 20 years.
Okay, so Bill, let's do that. Jim, let's ask Jim that question because, Bill, you and I were in the room. You invited me into the room when Tom Tillis, my esteemed Speaker of the House, said to me and everybody else in the room, right? I don't mean he was speaking to me directly, but I was in the room, right? That the only way North Mecklenburg is going to get I-77 to be widened is through this P3 partnership, this managed lane concept, which is a conservative concept, right? And so it's a market-driven concept. I was perfectly fine as they were describing it to me, right? So, Jim, Bill and I hear that, and Bradford and Tart and others heard our local Speaker of the House say this is the only way to make this happen. You, back then, said no. Why is that you knew something we didn't know? What was the difference back then?
What I knew was it was morally wrong. You cannot tax people for 30 or 40 years with the promise that you're going to give them infrastructure, an interstate highway with capacity that would match their population growth, and say, I'm sorry, we misspent the money for decades, so now we're going to lay another tax on top of you. Yes, the P3 concept was an easy way out, Politically, everybody bought into it. This is the problem with the swamp. When the entire swamp is nodding in agreement and screwing the taxpayer, then that's why the swamp wins. And I said, no, this is not the right answer. So you have to go out and fight for the right answer. And I got back in politics, lit the fires, stirred the pot, threw the mud, went up eyeball to eyeball with the governor and said, I will not accept this for the people I represent. They deserve better. Not easy, better.
Yeah, and Bill, we didn't see it for a while. I mean, all of us came on a little bit. Some of us sooner than later. You know what I mean? But the truth is, it wasn't until the details came out that everybody in North Mecklenburg decided to move away from the concept, and that's when we sort of had this divergence with then at the time Governor Pat McCrory. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because you were sort of at the front end of that change.
Well, the fact of the matter is most of us don't have the opportunity. We're not attorneys, and we don't read these. What is it? 1,500 pages of a contract. It's huge. And even afterwards, they had several attorneys looking at this, looking at how we would get out. And even the attorneys came out and said, "This thing is written in such a way we can't tell you what the penalty is actually going to be." But here's the thing, Joe.
Which pisses me off, by the way. As a business guy, you know what I'm saying, Jim. As a business guy, we do this stuff all the time. If you've created a contract like that, there's some shenanigans from day one that you would even let a contract like that put you in that bind.
First place, there was only one bidder. That's the first red flag. I've been in elected office on and off for 20 years. When only one person bids on the job, then there's something wrong with that, and you need to walk away. We knew that in the private sector. The truth is, we were fed a misconception when we were talking about managed lanes. When we talked about managed lanes, that's HOV lanes. That's not toll lanes. The real problem with this, and we'll get around to that, is this does not add any capacity for freight. And you cannot use the toll lanes in North Mecklenburg. This toll lane project was designed by the Charlotte Department of Transportation. I sat down, they told me that to my face. We designed this project. This is a project that gets people through the congestion in North Mecklenburg.
Okay, now you hit on where I want to go,
but
Jim.
Doesn't help the people of North Mecklenburg.
Well, okay. Well, that's what. Because is it possible? Because if we could get Bob Morgan on the phone, but he couldn't come, or if we could get Pat McCrory to come, he couldn't come here as well.
No,
we'll leave it at that.
They won't come. They don't want to do that.
But they have a different opinion because they have a different view, right? So they're coming from Charlotte. So they want people from Mooresville to get to Charlotte in the most expedited way. That is not a negative. They are representing a group of people in a positive way, right? So all we're saying is the problem is 77 for these four towns is our form of transportation for commerce.
Main Street, Lake Norman.
So it is creating a problem for us. But if you look at the entire project, it's all the way to Charlotte and clearly would do a benefit for Charlotte. Would you agree with that statement?
This absolutely works for Charlotte. There's not any doubt about it. It works completely. It's a perfect project for the city of Charlotte and the businesses in downtown Charlotte. And that's why I have said no, 1,000 times no. Charlotte has, and the great thing about this, I was told almost 5 years ago to the day that this would be over in 90 days. And my answer at that time was, this will be over when I say it's over. and we're still fighting it 5 years later because it works for Charlotte, and I don't blame them. Bob Morgan is doing exactly what he should do. He is getting his clients past my congestion.
I agree with that
to
statement.
Downtown Charlotte, and so I have no problem. I've told Bob, you're doing a great job. I just need to do a better job than he did. And when the Lake Norman Chamber came on board and started to fight on the other side of that, and the business community started to understand what was going on and look at the details, they began to say, no, while we like Charlotte and it's important that Charlotte prosper, you cannot kill us just to make Charlotte a little easier.
And Bill,
to
you're
get
not
downtown.
trying to kill Charlotte. You're just simply saying don't make it a toll as you're widening.
Absolutely. We would accept having a managed lane and a general purpose lane. But let me go back to what you were saying a while ago. 3 years ago, we were on board trying to continue this particular project. But as we get into the contract and we understood how bad this was, we understood that was a mistake. that was a mistake. And leadership is understanding you made a mistake, owning the mistake, and correcting the mistake.
Amen.
And for 3 years, we've said that was a mistake. Now we're going to get out there and we're going to fight to get this thing canceled. We want the project to continue, but we want the contract canceled. And that's the essence of what Pat McCrory was unwilling to do.
And that, in my opinion, guys, tell me if you agree with me now, because, again, I'm speaking, and I hate to – I know this is a small business show, and I've been on it for a while, but I hate to speak for small business people. You know how dangerous that is. But the reality is that's what we're saying. We're saying we support Bill Russell. We support Jeff Tart. We support John Bradford, even though they were supporters of this at the beginning, because they – were prepared to open their minds, review the information, and say, you know what? Those details make it something I can no longer support. Jim, are you comfortable with that as someone who's been a no from the very beginning? I mean, because as a business guy, I change my mind often.
Well, my job, part of my job as an elected official is to change people's mind when they're wrong. And I, with some modesty, will tell you I'm pretty good at that. Mainly because I will just call it exactly.
That's why you got my nickname, Bulldog.
Because I have thrown Republicans under the bus. I've thrown Democrats under the bus. I throw anybody who doesn't tell the truth under the bus, and I fully own up to when I'm wrong, just like Bill Russell was talking about, and I am from time to time, and there's no shame in that. But the truth is that we have allowed, and this is true for so many things, we have allowed the city of Charlotte to dictate what the North Mecklenburg, South Iredell area will look like, and we have got to take ownership of that. And I'm so thrilled that in the last 5 years, this has been the catalyst for us to start to do that.
So, Bill, do you want to add something to that before we go to break on 77? I know we could keep on about this, but when we get back, I want to talk about what the future looks like.
Yeah, and I hope we get into the economics, because we understand that this is bad from a quality of life perspective. We understand that. But it is, when we talked about how good it could be for Charlotte, no, it won't be. No. Because when you cut off your arms, when you do that, it kills the body. And eventually this is going to strangle the economic development of the Charlotte region.
Yeah, I think Charlotte is missing the point that this entire area absolutely strengthens the north side of their
and I'm going to argue with you. I don't think they missed the point at all. I think they only care about their own small geographic region. This doesn't just kill North Mecklenburg. One of the things I've been trying to beat on people for 5 years is this destroys manufacturing. Again, that's where I make my living. This destroys manufacturing in the Piedmont of North Carolina, about a 14 or 15 county area. This destroys it, or keeps it from growing for 50 years.
And I've heard you say that, Jim. Talk a little bit about that. Is that because transportation will be limited to the two general purpose lanes? Why is that? I've heard you say that.
No, that's exactly right. What happens with this program is I-77 has not been widened since the day it opened. It has the exact same capacity as it did the day it opened. The population in just the three towns in the Mooresville area has grown over 500% in that period of time. The contract does not add any more general purpose lanes. There's no more lane, not 1 square foot of asphalt or concrete for transportation and freight over the next 50 years. We are building, for those who've been around here for a long time, remember the Yadkin River Bridge. You had 4 lanes of I-85 that squeezed down to 2 lanes over the Yadkin River because the bridge wasn't big enough. This builds that same thing in North Mecklenburg. You cannot get freight from the Port of Charleston, which is, as we speak, being dredged. It's become the deepest port on the East Coast. You will not be able to get your product from that port, which is a huge economic incentive, through Charlotte and through Lake Norman into the areas in the Piedmont. And you will not be able to get finished product out of the Piedmont, out of the Statesville area, out of the corridor along I-40. You can't get it straight down I-77 and onto those ships in South Carolina in the Port of Charleston. And let me tell you, South Carolina is widening I-26 every single day as hard as they can. I-26 is going to become the golden manufacturing corridor of the Southeast. They have BMW and Michelin on one end of I-26 in South Carolina. They've got Volvo, Mercedes, and Boeing on the other end in Charleston, and a capital sitting in the middle of it. And they are doing everything they can, and they are being extraordinarily successful at bringing massive manufacturing into South Carolina. And that we are rapidly getting to the tipping point where we will not be able to compete. The supply chain is going to be so strong along that corridor that I-77 is going to shrivel up and die. And my logistics guy are telling me that all the time. When they finally started to understand what this was about, that this wasn't just about trying to get people to the airport from Davidson.
Right.
That this was a stranglehold on freight and logistics. That's when they started getting involved within the last year.
And Bill, we're going to feel it in commerce slowly, step by step, or lack of growth. Let's take a break and we'll come back, guys. This has been a great discussion on I-77. You are listening to the Bulldog, Jim Puckett, Vice Chair of the Mecklenburg County Commission for District 1, and the man, the master of business, Bill Russell, President and CEO of Lake Norman Chamber. If it's Friday morning, your business matters. We'll be right back. And we are back. This is Joe Vagnone. I am here with Chris Hoke, the news director for WSIC. Chris, thank you so much, buddy, for being on the show. I really do appreciate it. I must say this, that this show today has just been phenomenal. I really appreciate you guys being on the show. It has been very helpful, and I want to make sure everybody has a chance to participate. If you want to send me a text, please feel free to send me a text at 704-577-8030. I do got a question on a text, Jim. I wanted to ask you, they want me to know, what's the plan for Highway 21, and does this I-77 stuff put a stop on that?
Well, Highway 21 is there's expansion and improvements going on along I-21, but the problem is you can't replace I-77 by just adding a little bit of asphalt to I-20 to Highway 21. Highway 21 has the other disadvantage of it dead ends into the lake, so it's it's another local road. But to that point, the real problem with I-77 is I-77, while it's an interstate, is our main street, and that's a problem most people don't get when they say you're not supposed to use it as a local road. Okay, well then you should have built us some other local roads along the way. When you only built one, then that's the one we have to use.
Right. Well, Highway 21 actually goes under the water. We built a lake over top of it. It comes out the other side. And when we say it goes into the lake, we mean it goes into the lake.